This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today we have a very important show for you. For those of you who like money, who like saving money, who like investing in the stock market. For those of you who are saying to your kids, go to school and get a high-paying job, this show is for you. And the reason for that, as some of you know who have followed the Rich Dad message, is the way the government steals your wealth. The government steals your wealth and the banks steal your wealth is via the very money you work for. Yes, friends, the almighty U.S. dollar is rigged to steal your wealth. So is the euro, so is the yen, so is the peso. So that's why lesson number 1 in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the rich don't work for money because it's a way of stealing your wealth. And I think you're going to get a lot of history that at least will open your mind. So today we have 2 very important guests. One is Jerry Williams. He's the founder of American Precious Metals. And Jerry and I are about the same age, and we're the old guys who went through the battles of the shift in 1971 when the dollar came off the gold standard and the great highway robbery took place. And so Jerry is the person I buy my coins from and metals from. I don't go to him just for the metal. I go to him for the education because he's in the market every single day and he keeps me abreast. So it's for education information. This does not mean I recommend Jerry or recommend gold. I'm just going to let you have a point of view. We don't recommend investments. And second is Anthem Blanchard. And this guy's last name, you should listen to it, is Blanchard, is back in the 70s when Nixon took us off the gold standard and all this. His father, James Blanchard, is like God. This guy fought for our rights to own gold and silver, even though they were trying to take us away. Please listen to this. The way they steal your wealth is via our money. The way you keep your wealth is via things like gold, silver, oil, and other real intrinsic value products. So once again, for those of you who believe a high-paying job is a salvation for success, listen up. And also my sweetheart, Kim. What do you want to say, Kim?
Well, this is going to be interesting because, there's a lot of talk right now about the manipulation in the stock market, which we've talked about for a long time.
Really?
But both Anthem Blanchard and Jerry Williams bring a wealth of information, and there's so much we can talk about manipulation of gold, why silver, what's happening, who's buying internationally. I mean, there's so much information, and should you be buying gold and should you be buying silver? Where it's going to go.
And we're not recommending, but the most important thing is they steal your wealth via the money you work for. That high-paying job, you're being ripped off. So that's what we really want to listen to, because it's not really about gold and silver. It's about stop being ripped off and manipulated and all that.
And I was on a plane not too long ago, and I was sitting next to a gentleman, and a young guy. He was probably maybe in early 30s, 35, and somehow we got on the subject of gold and precious metals, and he said, yes, I have a lot of gold. I've been buying gold since I was a kid. And I'm like, why have you been doing that? And he said, because my grandfather, who lived through the Great Depression, told me if I want to have real wealth, I have to have gold and silver, and especially gold. So he's been collecting gold since he was like 6 years old.
Everybody say amen, all right?
Amen.
So, Jerry, what do you want to say? Because you've been on this program before, and we've gone through the battles together, haven't we?
Yes, we have. Well, that little story you just told is very important because education, I should say economic education, which you don't get in schools.
Right.
So this young fellow got it privately, and that's the way my kids have grown up, too, with that information. Right. Gold is a natural enemy of government-created money, and it is because it's off of the economic grid. Once you buy that and put it away, it can't be multiplied. It can't be,
it can't be. The price can be manipulated. But
the price has been. In fact, if you go back to what you talked about 71 there, the gold market had already been contained, at $35 an ounce for some 40 years.
Right. 1933.
And then, so they officially changed it in 1971 to $38.25 an ounce.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, Nixon put price controls on a number of things. They blamed housewives for buying too much meat, so they
blame it on the housewives. That's what's wrong with this economy.
Fault. So
those women out there.
Yeah, they put a cap on silver at $2 an ounce, and of course, immediately the silver supply just disappeared because nobody wanted to sell it, and everybody wanted to buy it.
So the government does not want us to own gold.
No, they really don't.
Or silver.
Because
they can't trace it, they can't track it.
Well, it is anonymous. Once you buy it and put it away, there's no recording of, and as far as the government knows, that you bought it or not. They only care about what the price is when you sell it. Then they want to collect the taxes.
Piece of that.
The point of it is, again, if you own gold and silver, it's hard to steal your wealth. That's really the thing. So they steal your wealth through saving, through the stock market, through all your job, through taxes.
And the manipulation is done through futures and options, which are, again, government controlled and government related. So they can manipulate it. Yeah, they can. They don't do it themselves. That would be too apparent. But they have their agents, and they go by the names like J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and the market will open. It's very quiet. Gold has come down, and then suddenly here will come 4,000 ounce contract for sale against a market that has no buyers, and so it'll drop $50 to $70 before a buyer appears. That scares people when they've just bought it the day before and they watch it take a big drop like that.
Yeah. So also another guest comes from a very, very famous pedigree family. His name is Anthem Blanchard. And again, if you're an old guy like Jerry and I, the name Blanchard is synonymous with the big fight to preserve our wealth here. And I'll say it again, for those of you who are working for money, you're being ripped off. They steal your wealth via the very thing you work for. So, Anthem, you're a young guy yet. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this business, but also importantly about your dad, James U. Blanchard III, how he bravely fought for America's right to legally own gold and spent the next 3 decades championing the inherent value of precious metals because he was a hero. He was a hero to us because he was fighting for our rights to preserve our wealth.
Yeah, absolutely, Robert. Yeah, he was an incredible hero, and I feel like I've tried to carry on his torch and his legacy and really see through his vision. And so I was introduced to the industry by my family. As you alluded to, my father, James U. Blanchard III, he was known as the pioneer of the gold legalization movement, as you alluded to. In 1933, FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, issued an executive order making it illegal for Americans to own gold and silver bullion. And so that existed for a 40-year period. He lobbied very, very hard. He had press conferences where he actually even smuggled in gold from Canada across the border. And he's actually in a wheelchair. He got into a near-fatal car accident when he was just a teenager and nearly died, had a couple of vertebrae extracted. He was a fearless man, probably had a lot to do with it. I think even before that, he was a pretty fearless guy from what I understand. And literally fought. He had a plane go over President Nixon's inauguration that said legalize gold, and he killed at one.
That was your father?
Yeah.
Wow.
I
was in that parade.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. You remember the plane?
I was marching. I was I went to a military school at the Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy, and all the surface academies marched. And I remember that going, wow, look at that.
Huh. Amazing,
yes.
Amazing. Yeah, that was my father. These days, it'd probably get shot down. So, but yeah, that was him. He was fearless. In one of the press conferences, supposedly the story goes that President Ford was watching it, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the story went that President Ford didn't even realize it was illegal for Americans to own gold.
Wow.
And a couple months later, that the executive order was rescinded, and so privilege was bestowed back onto us. Peasants, I guess you could say, to be allowed to own gold again legally.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking about a very important subject. Our guest star, Anthem Blanchard, comes from a very famous family in the gold industry. Jerry Williams was my precious metal deal, American Precious Metals, and I go to him more for information because he's in that market every day, tells me what's going on behind the scenes, and my sweetheart Kim. But we're talking about gold, but it's not about gold. It's really about how the government steals your wealth for the very money you work for. So it's a very important program. So it's not about gold, but it's about preserving your wealth.
How long did that fight go on until it actually
It went on for about 4 years, better part of 4 years. So yeah, and my parents were both high school history teachers in New Orleans, and just my dad just thought it was ridiculous that Americans couldn't own gold, and he ended up writing to a pretty famous newsletter writer named Harry Schultz, and decided that he wanted to create this new National Committee to legalize gold. And Harry loved the letter, and he published it on the back of his letter. And And from that spawned the National Committee to Legalize Gold. And
Jerry, do you remember those days?
Yeah.
I do, yeah. January 17, 1975. You could buy any kind of gold, and all gold contracts were then made legal, too.
But what was happening before that?
Well, this movement here, which gained a lot of publicity.
You couldn't buy gold.
Well, you could buy certain types that were on the Treasury's list. They had to be coins that had a certain date on them. This was approved in 1958, actually, for coin collectors. And so the various governments just created coins that were called restrikes. They had old dates on them, but they were making them new, like Mexico, Austria, other countries like that. But you couldn't even buy, and you could buy old U.S. coins, but not Krugerrands. There weren't even any maple leaves available then.
Yeah.
But no bars, no bullion.
Yeah.
I mean, even nuggets were illegal to own.
Yeah, I remember those days well.
Yes.
Did they actually come and confiscate the gold people?
No, but if you were
threatened it.
caught, the threat was there, $10,000 fine, and
If
10
you
year
guys can
imprisonment.
imagine this, back then, because I was not buying stocks, I was buying gold, and people kept saying, "You're a criminal. You're gonna get everything stolen. I mean, they're gonna come and knock on your door and take it away." And the reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, has nothing to do with gold and silver. It has to do how your wealth is stolen via the U.S. dollar. The more you work for, hang on to, and pray for dollars, the more your wealth is ripped off. So when we come back, we'll be going into why this happens, why the government wants to steal your wealth, but more importantly, what you can do about it. And one avenue is to own gold and silver. But there's many things you can do, but first you have to understand why, and we'll be going into why.
And one of the arguments I hear a lot for people not buying gold is because, they might make it illegal again. So when we come back, I want to hear Anthem's and Jerry's point of view on, is it possible that they may make gold illegal again?
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Was your dream really to work for someone else your whole life? Isn't it time to find your own success? To find your own dream? The time is now to not only dream, but to dream big. In RichDad.com's 5 Tips to Startup Success, you'll learn how to start small, but dream big. Identify your priorities. Learn the value of failing fast. Build a solid support team. And find the power of focus. How to start small, but dream big. How to identify your priorities. How to learn the value of failing fast. How to build a solid support team. And how to find the power of focus. Stop listening to the small voices telling you why you can't succeed. It's time to take the leaps that frighten you. It's time to stop seeing mistakes and start seeing learning opportunities. It's time to find your entrepreneurial spirit. Just go to richdad.com to download your free ebook today. That's richdad.com. With Rich Dad's 5 Tips to Startup Success, you can make your dreams a reality.
It's time to hear the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. If you would like to listen to this program on your own schedule, you can listen to it on the Rich Dad Radio app, available at the App Store. And if you missed any parts of this program, all of our programs are archived. You can go to richdadradio.com and you can listen to the program again, because we don't recommend investments, but we are a financial education company. And one of the ways you learn is via repetition. So if you listen to this program again, or you want some of your friends to listen to this program, go to richdadradio.com and all of our programs are archived. So today we have a very, very important subject. It's on the subject of gold, but it's not about gold. It's really about the dollar or the yuan or the franc or the euro, because what we're saying to you is the way your wealth is stolen is via the very dollar or peso you work for. And the reason you want to own gold is to minimize the theft, the stealing of your wealth. And on the program today is my sweetheart Kim, but also Jerry Williams. He's the founder of American Precious Metals, and he's a guy I buy from, not because so much the gold, but for the information surrounding what is happening, what's going on, because he's in the market every day. I'm not. And also Anthem Blanchard is a special guest. His name is famous in the gold industry from the long time ago when Jerry and I were just kids starting out in this whole thing. But his father is James U. Blanchard III, and he bravely fought for Americans' right to legally own gold. Now, if you can imagine that, when Jerry and I first started out, it was illegal to own gold. And I said earlier before we went to break, and I told my friends who were in the stock market, I said, now I'm buying gold. They said, oh, you're going to go to jail for doing that. Now, imagine that thought back then, and some of that thought still persists. In fact, a lot of it because so many people on Wall Street call gold a barbaric relic of the past, and all this stuff. And there's a reason for it. It's hard to steal your wealth with gold. They can manipulate the price, but it's hard to steal your wealth. Anthem, would you mind telling us what your father was fighting against? I mean, who in the world doesn't want you to own gold, and why? I mean, to me, it makes sense.
Sure. No, he was fighting against the ideology that government could fix everything and government could somehow make money come out of thin air. Because what he was fighting was a philosophy called Keynesian economics. And John Maynard Keynes was the chief economist of the White House back when gold was made illegal by FDR. Or he was the guiding economic force behind all of the actual actions that went into place. And so the idea was that at that time, the dollar was as good as gold. So it was redeemable. I believe it was $20.67 an ounce, and it was as good as gold. And then first FDR, he revised the gold and basically devalued the currency, changing the exchange rate up to $35 an ounce. And the idea was that eventually, to make it illegal, the idea was that the government could control the money, and therefore they could control the economy, and therefore they could get us out of the Great Depression and rescue the country and the world's economies. And obviously, that was proven false. It took a very long time for that entire principle to erode down to the point where the powers that be, the people that were in government office at the time, relinquished the right of solely the government, U.S. government, to hold gold and not its own citizens.
So basically the threat was they could confiscate your gold because it was illegal to hold gold. But again, my question is, why? They don't question me if I own a pussycat or if I own, a Barbie doll, but they don't really want you to own gold and silver. Jerry, why do you think that's? Why?
Well, in order to own gold, obviously you have to start with some money, and you're taking money that you've earned out of circulation by burying it in gold. So they can't multiply that
But
money.
why?
Why does the government not want you to do that? Well, you're going off the grid with your finances. If everybody bought gold, the money would be pretty much just out of circulation. It's not there in a bank account where it can thereby be taxed and inflated.
Yeah,
they really are forcing you into other areas like stocks, for example. We have
things that can print
0% interest rates on money market funds now for over 7 years. The Fed is basically giving the money to the banks who put it into their reserves, and now you have this huge balloon of bank reserves, and yet it's not being loaned into the economy. So where's all this stimulus going if it's not going into the economy? What's going into the stock market, which is where they want
you to go. So,
right.
So Anthem, let me ask you this. I mean, fighting the U.S. government, that's quite a challenge. How did your father win? How did he beat the U.S. government?
Well, the U.S. had closed the gold window in 1971, a few years earlier. So what that meant, before 1971, even though U.S. residents and citizens couldn't own gold legally, that other foreign countries and their central banks could, and they could change in their dollars, for $35 for an ounce of gold. And so really when Nixon closed the gold window in 71, that's when the U.S. officially defaulted. Because that's basically when the U.S. said, look, we can't have a redeemable currency anymore because we simply are having more currency than we have gold reserves. So, once that tie, basically the dollar went off the gold standard, it went to a floating currency system. Really gold was no longer currency at that point. So I mean, it's always going to be money, but it was no longer currency. And so I think that the threat was lessened. In terms of what it was prior when you did have an international gold standard.
Right. And today, they don't call it printing money. Our last Fed chairman, Bernanke, he said, we don't print money. It's called quantitative easing.
Yeah, that's a nice name on it.
Nice name.
He just touched on a couple of things there. Most people don't realize that the government nationalized the gold mining industry in 1942.
You mean like Chavez is trying to do, or did?
Right. It was all government controlled, so they just closed the gold mines, basically. In 1944 is when that fixed exchange rate started, and interestingly, John Maynard Keynes, who was instrumental in the gold devaluation, was the one who devised the Bretton Woods Agreement, where the gold would be $35 an ounce. But by 1971, there were free market forces. In 69, you had a two-tiered gold market. You had the official rate at 35, and then the free market, which floated up to 60.
Right. So the free market is sometimes called the black market.
This was actually in London. It was
but I understand. But a lot of people say, well, what's this rate? Like when you go to a foreign country, you say, what's my exchange rate for $1? And the way you know what's going on in the economy is what the exchange rate at the bank is than on the street. So What happened when they took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, it became a free-for-all, and that's what we have foreign exchange FX market today. And
interestingly, they called that the dirty float, as though it was somehow dirty for exchange rates to fluctuate away from the fixed rates.
So, Kim, I mean, when you met me, that's all I started talking about, right? We got to buy silver and gold.
We started buying silver in 1987. It's the first time I ever bought silver. And, matter of fact, we bought our very first house, our first residence, had to come up with a down payment, and all we had was, I opened the closet, and there's this closet full of silver bars, and that was our down payment. But let me ask Anthem and Jerry, there's this conversation that, the government's going to outlaw gold again and make it illegal. Is that possible? Is that even is that likely?
Well, if I can offer an opinion on that,
please.
I don't think it's too likely because they have such disdain for gold. We had gold auctions in this government in 1979, which were a total failure. They auctioned 1.5 million ounces of gold every month, and every month it was 5 times oversubscribed. And when they got done with it, the price went up. So it went from $200 to $800 once they quit auctioning the gold every month. That was 79 to 80.
That was a good time, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a wonderful time, yes, for me too.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
But as far as, the government can do anything, but like I say, they have such disdain for it that they value the gold that we supposedly have, the 8,000 tons, at $42.20 an ounce. Well, we haven't audited it for 40 years, and we're not even...
I mean, there might not be any gold in Fort Knox?
It's very possible.
Well, what country asked for their gold back, and they said, give us 7 years?
Germany.
That was Germany, and we were supposed to have given them 1/7 of that last year, which would have been over 20 million, or 20 tons, and they got 5 tons.
It's their own gold.
Of their own. Well, actually, I don't even think it was theirs because it supposedly had been re-refined. Oh. The actual gold that they had deposited in 1948 or whenever it was, that's probably long been leased out or gone. So we still owe it to them, but we just can't come up with it right now.
What do you think, Anthem?
Well, my guess is that I agree with Jerry's opinion. I don't think it will be, and my reasons are that most of us don't realize here in the U.S., but the U.S. is the world's asset and financial haven. So there's no reporting requirements if you're an international non-U.S. resident or a non-U.S. citizen. And I think that you'd have the biggest exodus ever in history. And I think there's so much more legal, low-hanging fruit legally. Bank deposits where someone's an unsecured creditor of the bank, where they're already legally from the accounting
retirement
provisions.
Plans. You're saying Jerry's saying retirement plans. Yep, 401ks.
IRAs,
yep.
Yep. Underneath the brokerage account is a bank holding company, so you have the same accounting issue there. So there's trillions, tens of trillions of dollars of lower-hanging fruit legally, without having to touch into property law and violations of property law, which anything is possible. But gold is now a commodity; it's no longer considered currency.
So one way or another, the government's going to get your money.
That's right. I think so, and I just don't think it's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news about bad news about money. And what we're talking about today, it sounds like gold and silver and those things, but really it's about how the government steals your wealth. And for those who have been followers of the Rich Dad message, that's why lesson number 1 in Rich Dad Poor Dad, rich don't work for money. Because as strange as it seems for those of you who are saving money and working at a job, the way your wealth is stolen is via the dollar. That is the most corrupt instruments we've ever seen in world history in the last few years. And that all changed in 1944 and 1971. So that's why Anthem Blanchard is very important, because his father, James U. Blanchard III, was a person who fought very hard for us to legally own gold. I mean, imagine that, legally. And as Jerry and I said, is when we were a lot younger, people thought we were criminals for owning gold. If you can, they're going to, you're a crook. It's like owning cocaine or something. All it was gold. And so we're trying to figure out why did James U. Blanchard, Anthem Blanchard's father, have to fight so hard for us to own gold? And I contend is because it's hard to steal your wealth. Any comments on it, Jerry?
I got a question. Look. I want to jump in because the U.S. doesn't want us to own gold, yet you got China, and China is encouraging its citizens to buy gold, and the governments are buying gold, and they're saying, citizens, you should buy gold. What's the difference?
Well, it does take it out of world circulation. There's the Chinese, 1.5 billion people, and they're very prosperous, and they have savings. I think there's a natural tendency for them, given their history of fiat currencies in China and devaluation.
In fact, China invented the first paper dollar.
They did, that's right. And they learned pretty quickly that they could abuse it. And so Chinese citizens bought gold. I mean, it's in their genes.
So what's the benefit to having all this gold in China?
Well, eventually they'll have it all because not only do they mine it and they import it, and now their citizens are taking their savings. That's what China wants. They want all the rare earth materials. They want all the precious metals. They want all the resources.
They want the real wealth.
The real wealth. That's exactly right.
They don't want paper like stocks and cash. So when we come back, we'll be talking more. I'll go more into how the U.S. dollar was designed to steal your wealth. And maybe then you might be inspired to listen to Jerry Williams of American Precious Metals and Anthem Blanchard. And if you want to go to Anthem's website, it's anthemvault.com. But first, you have to understand how the dollar was designed to steal your wealth.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money.
The Rich Dad Radio Show now goes where you go. Access and download shows with the Rich Dad Radio app, now available in the App Store and coming soon for Android. Access the entire Rich Dad Radio archive and listen to the shows you want when you want. Because as you know, repetition is how you learn.
If you're looking for the right investment opportunity that has the potential to offer cash flow and provide you with tax advantages, now is the perfect time to invest in oil and gas. I'm Mike Maselli, CEO of Reef Oil and Gas. We've developed the Reef Oil and Gas Drilling and Income Fund. The partnership is designed to generate revenue and provide partners with tax benefits from the production of oil and natural gas properties located in the U.S., with a focus on the Bakken in North Dakota. If you want to learn more about this Reef-sponsored drilling and income fund investment opportunity for both accredited and non-accredited investors, visit reefogc.com. That's reefogc.com.
The investment is sold by prospectus only. Energy investments are speculative and involve a high degree of risk. Oil and natural gas wells are naturally depleting assets. Cash flows and returns may vary and are not guaranteed. Past performance is no indication of future performance. Nothing herein shall be construed as tax or accounting advice. This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money. Today we'll listen to a very important subject. It's about the bad news about money. And as we started the show, is that the way the government steals your wealth, or the bank steals your wealth, or the rich steal your wealth, is through the very thing you work for, the U.S. dollar or the euro. So the reason money was created was to steal your wealth. And I'm going to tell you a couple of ways, or 3 ways that's done. Way number 1 is that when you put the money in your bank and your savings, there's a thing called a fractional reserve system. And today it's about 10 to 1. So you put $10 in, the bank can lend out 100. That means your $10 has now been devalued, but more importantly, has now caused inflation and all these other things in the market, which makes your money even less. So it's called the fractional reserve system. And it's, to me, hideous how it steals your wealth. Number 2 is via taxes. In 1943, it was a thing called the Current Tax Payment Act. And that act was passed during World War II, which made it legal for the government. If you're an employee working for money, the government could get paid via your paycheck. And it was, your pay was taxed. The government got paid before you got paid. So that's the current tax payment. And that's the same thing happening today. Most employees, you get this, you think you have $1,000 in paycheck, and it's down to $200 by the time you get it. It's because the government's already taken it out legally. And the third way is very simply via the fact they can print it. Why would you hold on to something that's being printed? It doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's why, I've been in gold for years, since about 1972. And we have Anthem Blanchard as our guest here. His father, James U. Blanchard, since 1971, has been fighting for the right to own gold. As we said, it was illegal to own gold, or it's confiscated. Also, Jerry Williams. So really, if you want to know how it's done, that's how it's done. And there's other ways you can avoid having your wealth stolen. But please don't delude yourself that the dollar is safe and that savers are smart and the government's here to protect you. Any comments, Jerry?
Well, it's like, my best analogy is watering the wine, because that's what they're doing. As long as
that's too close to home.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awful? Anyway, but that's what they do. They basically inflate the money because they spend more than they take in, and so the only way to finance that is by the creation of fiat money, or money with no backing. And usually that works its way into the economy, where you have too much money chasing too few goods. And that is not nearly as bad as it's going to be, because now the Fed is taking that money and putting it off balance on their balance sheet. So it doesn't really get into the economy. It gets into the banks as reserves, but we don't get to borrow it at 3% or 4%.
Anthem, you've taken your father's position, but what drives you?
Well, what drives me is to get rid of government's monopoly and control on money supply. And interest rates are supposed to tell us a lot about what the price of money is, but so long as we have these legal tender laws, which does that, we have to pay our debts, our government debts, our court fees, our taxes in U.S. dollars, and it creates artificial demand. The issue, and we have taxes that are put on other forms of money we use as currency, like gold and silver, or frankly any other kind of other commodity or metal. That it causes these irregularities, and it impedes market forces to allow for better forms of money to occur. So my middle namesake is Hayek, and it was after an Austrian economist, Friedrich August Hayek. And one of his last pieces, because he pleaded with governments, especially the British government, to stop spending, and he came to the realization that as long as the government could control the money, that it was impossible to ever hope to try to curtail the government, to try to get them to stop printing. And he realized we have to have denationalization of currency, and we need to have privatization of money, and that's the evolution that my father fought for. And that's the evolution that's coming, and that's the exciting aspect of what's coming, because it's a revolution in finance.
Yeah, this is my question. You guys have a vision of the future. If they keep printing money the way they've been printing money, what's going to happen, Jerry?
Well, the collapse of the dollar. We're already at the point where people won't buy our debt, so we buy our own debt and stick it in the Fed's balance sheet. But you can't sell that debt anywhere else. And you can even go to the beach in Mexico, where you used to be able to trade $100 bills for things, and they want pesos in Mexico.
Anthem, what do you think the end is going to look like?
Well, I hope that enough people start adopting non-bank alternatives, because banks are ultimately all doomed into the same fractional reserve currency.
What do you mean by non-bank alternatives, for example?
I think, for example, we've seen this new evolution of these cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. And there are a lot of flaws with Bitcoin, and I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. But the mechanism of being able to have a payment system. See, the issue that we have right now is our payment risk and our credit risk are intertwined, right? In order to pay someone, we have to use the banking system, so to check, credit card, so on. So we need to have systems and exchange forms that aren't succumb to the credit risk, that aren't endangered by the credit risk. And this is an evolution. This is going to happen naturally, I believe. As long as there aren't huge, massive disruptions anytime in the near future, my hope is that you'll see more and more adoption, and you've seen quite rapid adoption already.
Right.
To some alternatives, and this is going to continue and ramp up even more.
Right. We had a whole program on Bitcoin, and what I finally understand about it, Bitcoin is a basis of Gresham's law, and Gresham's law says when bad money enters the economy, good money goes into hiding. And that's, I think, why Jerry and I have been in gold, was because when we were kids, we saw bad money come in, and I started buying silver dollars that were real silver and quarters that were real silver. And I was getting rid of the quarters that had copper around the edge of them. What the theory is that humans intuitively know what money is. And so that's why when these bad quarters started coming in 1965 or 64, that's when guys like me, I was just a kid, and I just going to the bank and I was buying quarters that didn't have this copper tinge to them. And today it's called Bitcoin. So they're doing the same thing in kind of response to Gresham's law, which states that when bad money comes in, good money goes into hiding, and people are hiding their money. So Kim and I have been hiding our money in gold and silver for years.
And I still have some silver dimes back from those days. I collected the same thing when I was a kid. But here's my question, because we talk a lot about gold. There's a lot of different ways to buy gold and silver. And Jerry and Anthem, tell me the different ways, and what do you recommend? Well, for our firm, the lowest cost is bars. 1 ounce gold bars, either by a Swiss bank or the government in Australia. They're about physical bars. You come in, pay for them, you walk out with them.
What's between that and buying 1 ounce of ETF?
Well, you have it in your hand, Well, 1 ounce. You can't buy 1 ounce on ETF. You have to buy 10, which is basically one share, which is no firm's
And
going to take that. You got to buy a lot of
stands
them.
for Exchange
Traded Fund,
which is what?
Well, you get a receipt that shows that they have stored for you a certain ounces of gold
and
or silver.
did they store it?
There's been a lot of questions about that. I mean, this is supposedly a government-controlled stock market phenomenon there with the storage facilities. And when the Paulsons and the Soros funds pulled out of silver, all that physical silver that underlies those shares, it all hit the market. And the same thing has happened with gold now. When the gold collapsed back in 2011 below 1,500, all that gold went onto the market where it was consumed by China. So we know it was there.
There's no guarantee that these ETFs are backed by gold.
Yes, they are, and they have to be. But when the shares are
not.
sold, then the underlying metal must be sold to generate the money to pay the shareholders back. That's the whole thing.
What do you think, Anthem? What do you recommend? Physical gold or paper gold?
Well, there are pros and cons of all of them. I have the vast majority of my precious metal holdings in physical gold. The only paper gold I have is a few equities and some gold retailers or a few gold mining companies, but that's it. And so just important to remember the pros and cons. So further to the ETF concept, it's actually even further than that, where banks are holding the metal, and in the cases of the ETFs where a bank doesn't hold the metal, there's still a securities brokerage company that you're trading with to buy that ETF. There's a bank underneath it, and that means that there's exchange risk. And one of the most important aspects about gold and silver owning it is that there's no credit risk. It's no one else's liability. That you own it outright. If you want to put a liability on it, it's your property, and legally, an ETF is not considered property. And in a court of law, when the music stops and push comes to shove, and you want to get access and get liquidity, that's what matters. And that's what owning physical gold and silver, does. Now, I also own quite a few coins. Now, coins, there are advantages and disadvantages. The obviously advantage, you can hold it in your hand. They say possession's 9/10 of the law. They're easily recognizable. Some of the things I always say to consider, it's always good to go through the person you're buying from. So, buying coins through Jerry's firm, it's probably a great idea to go back through Jerry because you can help minimize your exchange spread, and also to kind of consider where you're going to put the coins. So a typical home insurance policy will only cover about $1,000. So just to be cognizant of how to store it and how to insure. So it's just important to educate yourself, like any other financial class. Just those are the basics.
And once again, Rich Dad does not endorse any kind of investment or say it's a good investment or it's a safe investment. We're a financial education company. We're not recommending it. And once again, our guests today are Jerry Williams, founder of American Precious Metals, but also Anthem Blanchard, whose name is infamous for the fight to own gold. His father was James U. Blanchard III, who fought to the right to legally own gold. Imagine that. It was illegal and criminal to own gold in many ways. And his website is Anthem, ANTHEM, vault.com. What do you think about the ups and downs of the price of gold, Jerry?
Well, again, the price is controlled by futures, unfortunately, and so that affects the physical market, which I'm in.
Okay, explain that. Controlled by the futures. What do you mean?
Like I said, you can have a large hedge fund or a large money center bank can go onto the exchange at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's very quiet and just offer up for sale 4,000 100-ounce contracts. That's a huge amount of gold onto a market where maybe it's not.
Sell all of that and then drive the price down.
To drive the price down. And then who benefits from that? Well, the individual investor stays out of that market, but underlying that is still the physical trades, which are happening in Switzerland and London, and that metal, the actual physical metal, is being bought by China. Maybe China's involved with shorting the gold to make it go down so they can buy it all cheaper. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Anthem, what do you think?
Well, the COMEX gold levels, which is what we're referring to, and we're also Anthem Vault. We're also in the physical gold business as well. And the paper markets, I mean, the inventories that are available for delivery are the thinnest that we've seen, ever. And it's really indicative of a very, very tight market. And it looks to me like there's some canaries in coal mines going on in China with some publicly traded companies defaulting on debt for the first time in the recent memory, really modern finance history for China. And that could portend some credit risk issues like we saw here in the U.S. 5 years ago. It could be a monumental event for the metal, and I think it's going to be the big catalyst for the next big upswing in the price.
So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show. Coming up next is Ask Robert, a very popular part of this program is where you get to ask your questions. I love silver. The reason I love oil is because silver is consumed, and that's what I love about it. So your comments on silver, Jerry?
Well, there's a finite amount of it, probably less than 100 million ounces, which would equate to about 10 years of an industrial supply. The ratio of silver to gold is 65 to 1, which is way out of line historically.
What does that mean?
Takes 65 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold.
So that means silver is really cheap.
Silver is ridiculously cheap. Now, and we sell more of that, by the way, in terms of volume than anything else, because it will ultimately be something you could barter with because it has a low unit cost.
Right.
So what do you think, Anthem? What do you think about silver?
I love silver. Man, what I always tell people is real simply, wherever gold moves, silver moves more. So, from their 2011 dollar peaks of silver back in April of 2011, it's off about 2/3 of the price. As I think we're going to continue the cyclical bull market for gold and silver, I think we're going to see silver vastly outperform gold. It's just you have to be on your wits about silver though, because it is very volatile. So, for people that aren't comfortable with volatility, I often just say just keep that in mind because it's really whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and my comfort level is the more volatile it is, the happier I am because every time it drops, I just call Jerry up and said I want some more. While people say, I bought it at 10, it's now at 9 or 2. That's a good time for me to buy, right, Jerry?
Yes, traffic in silver is very good right now, and the shortages that we experienced last year aren't there now. You can actually get silver fairly quickly out of the mint and other places.
But it's also consumed. That's a big
We're not
thing.
getting it over the counter from the public. The public is not selling silver. It's all one way now.
So there's a lot of points of view on gold and silver, and before we finish, Jerry has one
I just
pressing
got one
point.
more thing I wanted to get in before we end, and that is that several large banks have now settled in cash with their customers who have certificates for silver they thought was stored there. One was in Dutch Bank, another one is Swiss Bank.
What does that mean? There was no
They
silver
never
there?
had it.
So they traded it in for cash.
They never had the gold. The bank gave you a certificate for gold, and they didn't have it. And then the price starts going up and down.
Do that.
They just say, we'll just settle it at today's
Here's your
market.
cash,
Yeah,
so
here's your
take
cash.
it and run. Wow, interesting.
I forgot to plug my book. I wrote a book years ago. It was called Conspiracy of the Rich. And once again, the whole theme of this show is how the rich steal your wealth through the money you work for. So all you guys are working hard for money, saving money, setting money aside for your kids' college education, you're being ripped off one side and down the other. So I want you to keep that in mind because there's nothing to do about gold and silver. It's about stop being ripped off. And when we come back, we've been going into Ask Robert.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money.
Rich Dad says good debt makes you rich and bad debt makes you poor. In Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton's book, The ABCs of Getting Out of Debt, you'll learn the strategies for avoiding and overcoming bad debt, as well as using good debt to your advantage. This book gives you the tools to turn today's credit environment to your benefit. Repair your own credit or beat the lenders at their own game. Order your copy of Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton's book, The ABCs of Getting Out of Debt, today at Amazon.com.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Going to a very popular part of our program now. It's called Ask Robert. If you have any personal questions, go to richdadradio.com. Go to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. And if your question is used, we will send you an autographed copy of one of my books. And so I want to thank Anthem Blanchard again for being part of our program. And Jerry has agreed to stay with us. And you should all have a guy like Jerry Williams. Jerry is a founder of American Precious Metals. So Melissa, what's the first question?
Thank you, Robert. Our first question today comes from Sean in Indiana. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So his question is this. Robert and Kim, you often talk about owning gold and silver. Do you do anything to make these assets cash flow, or do you simply see them as an insurance policy in the case of continued government economic malpractice?
All of the above. The thing I'm saying here is this. I don't save money. I save gold and silver and things like oil wells. And, I want things that are real. And the reason I love gold and silver is because they've been money for thousands and thousands of years. And the whole theme of this program is is that your wealth is being ripped off by the very thing you work for and save, called the dollar or the yen or the euro. So for all you guys out there who own dollars and yen, you're being ripped off. That's all I'm saying. So why save it when you can preserve it? Any comments here, Jerry?
My mantra has always been gold is for saving, not for speculating.
Yeah, that's my sentiment exactly.
And I think Sean is going back to, I appreciate Sean because he's going back to the Rich Dad definition of an asset. And an asset, according to Rich Dad, is something that puts money in your pocket whether you work or not. So gold is not an asset. It may be an investment. It is an investment. Whether it's a good investment or a bad investment, that's up to you. But there's a difference between an investment versus an asset. So we buy gold and silver for insurance against the dollar.
Money market funds aren't investments either. Basically,
no, but,
it's a place to park money
my point
until
here
you find
is,
a higher
we
use
don't
for
do
it.
money market funds.
It's not cash flow, but it's wealth flow. All you guys saving dollars out there, your wealth is flowing out of you as the Fed does a number of things. One is print money, one is loan your money out through the bank fractional reserve system, and 3 is the tax system. So it's not money flow, it's cash flow you're protecting right now. Wealth flow, I mean. And the reason I hold gold is because it's harder to steal my wealth.
So, Melissa, there was a second part to Sean's question.
That's right, Kim. His other question in the second part was, the government has outlawed the ability to own physical gold and silver in the past. Why do you assume that this will not happen again?
That's why I'm glad Jerry stayed behind. That's a great question. Jerry, what's the answer to that?
Well,
you are a
there's
dealer
an error in the
silver.
question, which is silver being outlawed. It never was outlawed. Nixon put price controls on it for less than a year, and that didn't work. That was a miserable failure. But anyway, but gold has been outlawed here, and it's been outlawed in other countries in the past, both basically so that you were forced to use the currency that they issue. But that 1933 rule, when you look back to the Depression, in order to stimulate the economy, at that point, with a gold standard, you had to have more gold in the Treasury. You couldn't just create money at will. And the best way to do that was, of course, was to call it all in, which was not so much of a confiscation as was a nationalization. And then after collecting it all, well, you raised the price. So it was a 75% devaluation of the dollar, and it gave the Fed all this extra money to goose the economy out of the Depression, which didn't work.
So why today are so many people saying, they might confiscate gold again, they might make it illegal again? Who's saying that? And
well, unfortunately, the main proponents of that are people in my industry. These are people who are coin dealers that would have you believe that you shouldn't buy low-premium bullion items because they will be coming to the same scrutiny that they did in 1933.
So therefore buy
these rare coins, which could be marked up 300 or 400%. Right. Which is very profitable for them, but not the best thing for the investor.
That's a really good point because a lot of people don't know the difference between just bullion, which you're just talking gold bars or gold coins and silver coins, and
rare coins.
And rare coins because,
I can guarantee you almost, which is a dangerous word to use, but if you fall into the purview of one of these television ads where you call up and you say, I'd like to buy some gold bars, the first thing they'll tell you is, no, you don't want that. You want this.
Because
they all do it, and it'll be some obscure thing that you'll find trouble selling later to get anywhere near what you paid for.
So should anybody own collectible coins?
Yes, people who are collectors, people who know the business.
Industry,
but somebody who doesn't know, it's their first time into the market, they shouldn't be doing that.
Let me just say that the regular bullion coins are things like Krugerrands, Canadian maple leaves, and
American gold eagles, our own country's coinage.
So those are regular bullion coins. But somebody says, I have a rare 1892 gold eagle. What would you say?
Well, if you want that, your grandfather's birthday, or
would you know
the
value of that, or is it just marked up at that moment?
Well, it would depend on the condition. That's another thing. You've got a 70-point grading scale on these rare coins too. Is it encapsulated or not?
That's what they do, right? They call you up and say, you don't want bullion coins, you want the rare coin.
Yeah, because they'll never be confiscated. Now, how can they guarantee that?
That's my point.
The government, to get onto, they have this all.
So you're actually saying there's some unethical.
They could take the jewelry off of your hands if it came desperate enough.
We don't recommend investments. We recommend you getting educated about investments. And what Jerry is saying is a lot of coin dealers who don't want you to buy bullion because the margins are too thin, right?
That's correct. He's absolutely
and they can make up their mortgage on a rare coin.
Pay for TV ads and things like that.
Yeah. Is that Pat Boone on television?
Point.
Well, I don't. Does he do that? He was touting IRAs. I know that for a while.
I know,
but he's mostly doing bathtubs.
Strike that. Okay, we'll put that in.
Put Pat Boone down. Come on.
He's doing bathtubs that you walk in.
Beat up on Pat Boone.
Yeah, that's one of my competitors.
Hey, look, it costs money to advertise, you guys. They got to pay for that ad somehow. And what Jerry and I know, the margins on coins are razor thin. So that's why they want to sell you rare coins with the idea that they can't be confiscated. And that's the story you'll hear. Right, Jerry?
Yes. And there's no
Next
guarantee
question.
of that.
Our next question comes from Jerry in Colorado. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says this: with all the technology being developed in the information age, you think some sort of digital currency, Bitcoin, will replace paper money, including gold and silver? Even the Bible says so.
Oh, you mean the Bible says
I
buy
missed that,
Bitcoin?
I missed that book.
Is that what you're saying, Jerry?
Is that New Testament or Old?
My God, I must have missed that chapter in Bible class.
Okay.
Look, I'll just say this much. Bitcoin is not a bad idea if you know what you're doing. It's like anything else. If you know how to get in and out. But gold and silver have been around for a number of thousands of years. They've been money ever since. A lot longer than Bitcoin in the Bible. What do you think, Jerry?
Well, I agree. I don't think there's anything in the Bible I've ever read, and I'm not an expert, that describes cryptocurrencies. That was that's relatively recent.
But you
gold and silver are.
You bought a Bitcoin, didn't you?
I did. Actually, strange story is I got it from a fellow in 2009 for $3, a physical coin.
There was a Bitcoin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get them, but the idea, of course, is to have it on an exchange because it'd be easier to handle. When I went to sell this physical coin, you had to pull the clear plastic cover off of it to find the coin, which then you had to put that number into your wallet on the out there on the internet, and then try to find a buyer where you could transfer from your wallet into theirs. And it's like a drug deal, which you don't want to let the coin go till you got your money in your account, but the buyer doesn't want to let the money go till he's got the coin. So it's like, you're standing there online dealing with somebody you don't know and waiting for his money to hit your account so you can instantly hit the send button and send him your Bitcoin.
Look, just remember this, several thousand years ago, there was a little country called China. And they're the first guy that started printing money on paper. And it has not stopped. Paper money has come and paper money has gone. The U.S. dollar, the U.S. was in the same problem with called the Continental. They printed too many of it. And we had the Confederate dollar. They printed too much of it. And even during the Revolutionary War, the English started printing it just to screw up the financial system. Yeah,
Lincoln financed the Union with greenback dollars, which were fiat dollars, and they weren't redeemed for 10 years later.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been done before, but gold and silver have always remained true. Any comments, Kim? Final comments on this?
I think this is a great show for a lot of people around the gold and silver, and I think a lot of people don't really know where to start. So where would you start, Jerry?
Well, start with some education. There are a lot of good books out there. We have an archive of those things.
What's that book? Currency Wars by
James Turk. That's a very good one to start.
James Turk, Currency Wars.
And somebody like you have a precious metals store. You want to go to a precious metals dealer, correct?
Right.
Because people don't even know where to go. They go to a pawn shop or they go to some bank or something.
We have people all the time that have shopped around. They find us online and they look around.
So
and they
precious metals shop, they can come. They could get a 1 ounce silver coin. They can
and
get
we ship all over the country too. So,
gold coin. Okay. Great.
So this is American Precious Metals. Jerry Williams is the founder. His website is apmaz.com. apmaz.com. And remember, we don't recommend Jerry or investments. We just bring him on board for his wealth of knowledge and information. And you still have to make up your own idea. Jerry and I have been around this for years. When I met Kim, I was talking to her about gold and silver. And we're still talking about gold and silver. So if you have any other questions, thank you for your questions out there. Go to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com, and we'll do our best to get you your question answered. And if your question is used, we'll send you an autographed copy of our book.
You've been listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. To learn more about the good news and bad news about money, go to RichDadRadio.com.
This is what it sounds like when your brother gets arrested after school for having coke in his backpack. This is the sound of my fist hitting the wall. The sound of me hating myself for being happy he got caught, because at least for one night he won't be using. And this is what it sounds like when he's back at school right where he started. 1 year sober.
If you're in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org. Your story can change someone else's.
From the partnership at drugfree.org and drugfreeaz.org.